Lisa, thank you for a great story. I love a great story, and I love how you could feel it. You can feel it. And so that is why I'm excited about being asked to be part of the impact story. And then somewhere along the line, we went from an official kind of title of my talk to a very kind of, I think, time-appropriate talk. You're going to learn in the next 2 slides that I'm officially retired. And in that, you get to do a reflection on advice to my younger self. Yay, okay, so this should be fun. Let's see what I would tell myself. Okay, so that is kind of my premise here. You know, we forgot the popcorn on the thing there, but there we go. Wow, there was more on that slide. Mine not, there we go. Okay, whew, this could be interesting. All right. So there are a lot of people online, and as much as I think everybody knows me, there might be a chance that a few people don't know me. I even had someone who knew me didn't know that I started at the Ford St. Thomas plant. I outlasted the Ford St. Thomas plant since it's no longer there, just outside of London. But let me give you a quick review of my journey, and then we can talk about some of the things I did maybe well, and maybe some of the things I would have, if I'd known that. Okay, so I started where many of you started. I was a co-op student at University of Waterloo, and the Ford plant, and Unifor in particular, had negotiated that they should do some ergonomics at the Ford St. Thomas plant. So in my co-op interview, I loved the question, what is ergonomics? Okay, this is going to be a really good interview here. So between all of that, I convinced them that I knew what ergonomics was and that they should take me on as a student to start this ergonomics program. And then when I graduated that year or so, they said, hey, this sounds like a promising thing. We'll hire you, and you get to be the first ergonomist then for Ford. And it was a lot of find, fix, and no rules, so off I went to do ergonomics. So from there, I can't actually read this, so it's good. All right. We had a good 5 years. We'll talk a little bit about that 5 years of doing a truly reactive, starting an ergonomics program, and got the attention of someone down on stateside, a very different time there between the borders. I used to zip back and forth. But headquarters, world headquarters got some, we made some impact, and they said, hey, why don't you come down and start this ergonomics thing in the U.S., to our assembly plants in the U.S. So in 1991, packed up my passport and my suitcase, and off I went to Dearborn, Michigan. Main goal was, again, what we started in St. Thomas, a reactive program, starting of the local ergonomics committees. We call it LECs because we love acronyms at Ford. And basically got to travel to all the different plants and help them start and educate ergonomics committees. Okay? Then we were making some good progress on our injury reductions. One of the things that we used to do in our reactive program is what we call the tooling buy-off. So before you're allowed to send the tooling into the plant, you send the safety and the ergo person, and they do their basically checklist, make sure people can reach it, check out the forces, all that stuff. And a small fifth female couldn't reach some of the clamps that were needed. So I said, you can't ship that in. You got to change the location of those clamping. And the engineering manager said, where the hell, I'm sorry, not supposed to swear. Where have you been for the last, year while we've been designing this? And I'm like, well, I've been doing my reactive ergo and changing the world. Why do you keep sending me the same stuff, right? We fixed this in the plant couple years ago. Like, why are you redoing this? So we had this come to, moment and said, okay, you need to be part of my engineering team so that we don't keep making these same mistakes. And so that was a pivotal point where I was moved out of safety and into engineering. I'm thinking, this is gonna be great. And then the problem was that after you're moved to engineering, that is 20,000 engineers in Ford Dearborn. That's a lot of people to deal with. So we started to make some progress, started to do some of the reviews, realized immediately that we needed a little bit bigger team. So that was my first growing of the Ergo team then. So we hired Ergonomics there. I have to keep looking up there. And we're looking at some stuff, and the engineers use that system called CAD, and they want me to look at it and then say what my ergonomic assessment is. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do with that colorful piece of equipment you're showing me. Where does somebody reach? Where would they stand? How do they have to put their hand in there? And they're like, I don't know, you're the ergonomist. So I didn't know because I'd lost my big resource of the worker who used to tell me what the problems were on the job. So we had to then explore how could I bring a worker into the CAD, and that was my journey with digital human models, and then looking at some of the motion capture to figure out how people might work around this CAD and things like that. So then we're making impact, and we then go from just North American operations with our Ford 2000, basically. In 2005, we launched global ergonomics, both the engineering side, what I'll call the proactive, and to have the ergonomic teams, which most of the Europeans had. But now we have to work globally on how we design vehicles, and more importantly, not so much the vehicles, how we build the vehicles. So that's a very important part of that. Common issues were coming up between like Ford, GM, and Chrysler. So we found this really cool organization called US CAR, which allowed me then to work with GM and Chrysler at the time, Stellantis now, and take on some bigger projects. So, we've heard throughout the stories, collaboration. This was a big turning point of collaboration. This was also meaning we could pool our money and our resources and do some really impactful research together to move the needles ahead and find some good answers. Okay, so now we're going on to our story. We have 2017, it's rocking, we're making impact, and I have a great opportunity presented to me. I have to say it took me a little bit of a moment to decide whether it was a great opportunity, but in 2017 I left Ford. They did give me a nice package, so let's just be realistic. And I had heard that Fanshawe College back in Canada, hometown, home area, was going to start a program in advanced ergonomic studies. Like, yeah. So left Ford and then went on to be the program coordinator at Fanshawe, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. And then I think I have lots of my grads here. Last count was over 125 new and exciting ergonomics. I guess I can't call them new from my 2018, 2017 graduate class. But, excited to be part of their journey. And then the big news is in May of this year, I retired. Yay. I know. I know, exciting. But my road continues and my journey continues, and this kind of stuff really excites me if you haven't figured that out. So I call myself now a self-appointed ergonomics ambassador. So it's my new job title, and it does allow a lot of travel and a lot of things that I wanted to do. Okay, so that's my cool journey, and now you get to hear about what kind of made things, like what were moments that I was really important. Wow, where's the other stuff? Okay. I guess I did this in this way. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what caught the attention of Ford in headquarters in the States to bring this little University of Waterloo grad who really didn't know what they were doing down to the United States. We made impact. Man, we were seeing injury reduction. And I have to say, you know, I would love to tell you, and we were doing productivity improvements and we were doing quality, but that wasn't my focus. We had enough injuries that all of a sudden to see us going from, wow, what's happening at that plant? What are they doing that is making an impact on those injuries? So that was their attention, right? And then what changed that moved Ergo from reactive to proactive? I actually don't like saying it that way. You never stop doing reactive, right? I mean, you have to. But there can be a focus and a shift on getting your whole organization to who's ever involved with the upfront stuff or how things get into your plant that you make that move. You kind of heard my story. The engineering manager was basically tired of me calling it too late. So he made me go to proactive, right? Digital human model. Again, I wish I was so brilliant that I said, I need a digital human model. Are you kidding? I was like, I have no idea what I'm looking at when you show me this CAD. So it was like, there must be a way. I need a CAD human, and that was it. Got to do some really cool research with Penn State and University of Michigan, and started me on another path on that. And then this one is one I'm really proud of. I think it happened by accident, but I'll talk through this a little bit. They made me do Six Sigma training. Oh my God! If any other person had to do a Six Sigma training, oh yeah, it's a lot of freaking work. Come on. Okay, and I'm an ergo person. There's a lot of data in that Six Sigma stuff, but the last step is a really, really good step that we should all pay attention. That's one of my advice. Is ask yourself, how do you prevent this from ever happening again? So if you fix these jobs, how do we stop that ever happening again? So that is actually something that we worked on. Took me a little time to get there, and I have some examples of that. So that is how the ergonomics program then is sustained and things like that. And then I just added this one. Continuous improvement is coming out in our other people's talk. The future is in the students and in the collaborations, right? So yeah, I'm retiring and gonna go have lots of fun, but the light, I'm passing the torch. There's so much enthusiasm and innovation and new challenges. And so I think the answer is in those collaborations and in the students. Okay, so now I'm really done, and I haven't even given you any advice. Okay, so that's my journey. But it made me reflect. I'm a runner, so I'm running away. Okay, what's my advice? I don't know what my advice is. The best I can say is almost what you kind of asked me. What motivates you? What excites you? And Lisa touched on it. You need a vision, right? You need to know what your North Star is. And for me, I was new in the field. The field is relatively new, so there weren't all these rules. And I absolutely, without a doubt, believed that I could make a difference and that we could reduce injuries. Not only reduce, is that we were going to eliminate injuries. Like, I never failed to believe, okay, maybe failed is not a strong word, but my vision was we can make a difference. If we apply good ergonomic principles, we will impact this injury rate. And I think that's my moment of, like, I never doubted it. I don't know if any of you read the Chris Hadfield book, Astronaut's Guide to Life. And I loved that here he was, this young kid. He dreamed of being an astronaut. He's from Canada. They don't even have an astronaut program. But that never stopped him from dreaming. And every decision that he made was with, well, maybe one day I'm going to be an astronaut. And I guess I could have been an astronaut. No, that's not my point. I think I absolutely believe, without a doubt, that if we get down to the plant floor and we reduce those risk factors, we take out those high forces, we take out the repetitions, and we take out those postures, awkward postures. I was going to ask you guys, what are my 3 main risk factors? I got all my students here. And you do that, you will make a difference, right? And so that is my number one. Get a vision and stick to that vision. And sometimes it's going to be like, I remember someone saying, how can you have a vision of 0 injuries? Because I'm not going to accept one. I at least believe that I know we can do all actions that will help us get there, and that one day, maybe we'll get there, okay? So I believe that we can get there. I love that at one point, I'm talking from my pulpit here, but, my chief engineers, the day that they start talking, our quality is really important, our production is really important, and by the way, I expect us to build our cars with no injuries. Safety, ergo-related thing. So one of that things, and I was kind of thing, is for us, we didn't call it MSD reduction. We always called it ergonomics. And I know that was one of the questions. I don't know if there's a good answer to that, but ergonomics then was able to say you got to do a reduction of the risk. So for us, that became a very important thing. If you're going to do ergonomics, I want to see your risks and I want to see a reduction. And remember, we are manufacturing. So I think in a manufacturing environment, that maybe is something that they could relate to. Whoa, what was that? Okay. Wow, I should have actually went through these slides a bit. I did, but I guess not on slides. Okay, so how do you get your vision and actually share it to the 500 people online? The first thing is, I look back, build relationships. Okay, so now you're like, okay, build relationships, that sounds good. I even came through on all of those. There's a few relationships that the ergo has to do that's a little bit different than the engineer and a little bit different than management. You have 2 customers. You have the worker on the line, and then you have management and engineers. I'm going to lump them together, right? Because they're the ones that have to really get you the money, or at least approve the money and do it. Where your worker is the one that they have to trust you that you're going to be their voice, right? So that's my big advice, is build relationships. And how do I build relationships? A lot of the leadership programs out there will tell you this. The latest thing now is to tell your story. I've been telling stories way before that became a thing. So tell your stories. And I used to hate when they ask you, what is your biggest flaw? And I always used to answer, I talk too much. Hate that question. But I now want to tell you my advice is that's maybe not a bad flaw, but the caveat to that is you also have to listen, right? Yes, I have a story I'm excited to tell you, but one of the ways you build relationships is everybody has a story. So take the time, share your story, because your story is a way of building that trust, but also listen and ask those questions about their story, how they even got there. I remember telling someone that my dad was a bricklayer and helped build the CN Tower. Cool, I got to go to see that. Probably wasn't allowed, so let's forget I said that. But it was one of those that, you get us. Well, I get you. But at that point in time, back in the 80s, right, there was a big difference between management and workers. And so sharing my background, sharing that I came from a working class, family was a very important part of accepting and building trust. Now, your story is different, and how you got where you are, how you got into ergonomics is always fascinating to them. And to anyone that you're actually trying to build that. So my point is, tell true stories, even if you don't think they're ergo related. They can be what you need for that foundation, because now your role, and I know as I'm aging, a lot of my friends are having to be advocates for their elder parents. You are going to be in a great spot. You have to be an advocate for a lot of people. You are the advocate for those workers, right? They're working away, and management, bless them, they just don't have the time to necessarily go down to the level that you can go down and find out what's happening on the jobs. So that's your thing, is to try and understand your role as an advocate, because you have built that trust. Now, you leave the plant floor, you walk up to the engineering offices and the management, they don't trust you. But because they've been taught to do their quality job, their engineering job, health and safety, yeah, what do you want me to do? Like, it's a bit of your extra work. Actually, I used to have some engineers that used to call me a constraint. I think it was lovingly. I think they were like, oh, what constraint are you putting on me today? But one of the ways that we build down and we build up so that we have that relationship is we have an amazing skill of using data, right? So you have got to become the teacher, and you have got to explain that what you're saying, that there's science behind this. I know it's sad that even at this day and age, but a lot of management doesn't actually realize why they think, oh yeah, I know, if we put the part over there and they have to lean over, that's just inconvenient. No, it's not just inconvenient. There's these things called levers. And guess what? When you put the 20-pound weight out here versus holding it close, it makes a difference on the compression on the spine. And then, we'd laugh, and I'd say, you should use that word at dinner tonight, compression on the spine. Because it's about educating them that our field is science-based and that we can make a difference. We can move that 20-pound weight closer, and they don't have to reduce the weight of that part, because all they heard was 20 pounds is too heavy. No. 20 pounds at that distance is too heavy. Now let's look at how we can reduce that risk factor. So there's a whole educational part that has to go to the management buy-in and the building of the relationship. So you use your ergonomics assessment now to show that risk, and you use your measure to demonstrate that risk. I think I have my buddy Ryan in here. One of our biggest frustrations at Ford was we would have to measure our forces, and then we would have to convince the engineer that we knew how to measure forces and that the forces that we were measuring were real. Yes, we didn't make this number up. So we had a lot on how to measure forces, believing that this really is over our limits, and things like that. So you really have a lot of work in this space too. But once you get there, they become part of your team, right? They know, all right, well, if we need to measure forces, let's go get her. Let's measure those forces. And then they understand, where you're coming at. Now, I'm talking injury reduction. I also believe that ergonomics done well is optimization, and optimization means we're going to get some quality improvements and we're going to get some productivity improvements. So the challenge is that I was really the only one who believed that. The quality manager had different ideas of what took to make good quality, and the production guys had tasks and rearrangements, reallocations. So it's really important that you then work with them to understand what's important to them, right? So I remember having lunch with a quality manager. I just, sat on a table like that, and we had all these vehicles parked, and I'm like, why are all those vehicles not being shipped? And he's like, the sunroof is leaking, and we can't find the leak. I don't know if you've ever had a leak on your roof. They come in over here and show up over here. Same thing with the sunroof, right? We had this leak, and who knows where it was leaking, and so bad. Customers don't like it when your sunroof. They want sun to come in, not water to come in, right? So I'm like, that's a really lousy job to install that the drainage plugs, the drainage in the sunroof. And he goes, no, it's not. I have the parts right here. Come on, it's easy. So we go to his office, and he's got the sunroof on the desk, and he's got the drainage ones, and he's going in, and he's showing me how easy this is. I'm like, you do understand the worker is actually inside the car, and they're reaching up through the sunroof and into the little channel and using a pinch grip, and they can't actually see what they're doing. Oh, but the parts, right? So we went for a walk. We had some little talks with the workers, and lo and behold, we found that there was some improvements that could be made on guiding, so the tapering of the drainage so that it actually went in without that. And not that we were able to move it from a pinch grip because it was a little tiny little spot, but we were able to put a little stop so that you could push on it instead of just pinch and push. So anyway, from that moment on, when they had some quality issues, one of the first people that he would come and talk to is Ergo. Hey, have you guys ever had any Ergo problems with this? We're having a lot of trouble with wind noise, or, and I'm like, he's on my team. I didn't have to, or if I did have a one that I'd be like, maybe we are having some quality issues, I'd go and say, having trouble selling this on, I need a fix, but we haven't injured anybody yet, but this looks really crap. Any warranty data on this? I'll get on that, Allison, and give me some warranty data. You got some warranty data? I have some more justification. Yes, I can use my risk factors and all my good data, which I did, but nice to throw in a good little quality data impact. So again, it was because of the relationship, not that I went out to make that link, right? And so that is what I think. Go talk to others outside of the health and safety field and get them on your team. The more, the merrier. Okay. One of the big initiatives, how am I doing? Okay. One of the big initiatives that we did was bringing everybody to understand ergonomics, ergonomic awareness. We did a fun thing called Ergo Days, where we actually brought the engineer who was working on the future vehicles into the plant to work side by side with the worker for basically a full day, a day and a half, and to get an appreciation of what it took to build their part. But the other part was to put a face to that building of the vehicle. They knew now who they were designing their part for. And this was a huge success. The engineers often quoted, I had no idea what these guys were going through. Immediately I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this to this and this and this. So we were able to then go from, me selling Ergo or my ergonomic team selling Ergo to the engineers understanding the importance of designing a workplace, even so that you can build it better. Yeah. So Ergo Days were a lot of fun and a lot of work to bring those engineers. Now, I would have liked to put this as my number one advice because, as you can tell, I have fun, right? So you got to do this every day, and you are going to be selling, right? It's just the nature of our business. I'm sure it's the nature of a lot of jobs. But there are so many cool people out there. There are so many new technologies. There is a lot of opportunity to have fun in this field because it's still such a new field that the rules aren't really all there. But I ran this kind of idea as one of the things to my husband, and he said, some people don't know how to have fun. What? So what do I mean when I have fun? So I kind of was like, okay, on the run, what do you do to have fun? I don't know, I just have fun. It's just kind of a natural thing. But one of the things that I get all excited about is like, okay, who's a Survivor fan and who's an Amazing Race fan? Just up in Collingwood, that was really awesome. That's my hometown. So I get inspiration by whatever the latest thing is, what games I'm watching, what games I'm playing, and things like that. So one day driving to work, there used to be a show called Junkyard Wars. I am giving my age here. Anybody else heard of Junkyard Wars? The best, right? So they'd have two teams. With the two teams, they'd give them a challenge, and they each could go find stuff out in the junkyard, and then they have to build it, like a missile builder, launcher, whatever, and things like that, and see who had the best built out of junk. So the idea I pitched was that why don't we have an ergonomic problem, and then we will pitch two teams. They can use anything in the pilot plant, which is like a junkyard, but in a much tidier way, because the pilot plant had tool makers, it had a carpentry shop, it had a welding shop, like it did everything. It was the best place to hang out. So we launched Junkyard Wars, where we brought in the worker to demonstrate the flock run and weather strip, and we challenged two teams to come up with an assembly aid to do that. I got to be the MC and had a big hat and my speaker, and I had a lot of fun. Now, you're more than welcome to do that, but I say look and ask yourself what is fun for you? What do you like to do? What kind of events? And see how you can make those come into your world. The other thing that I love is new tech. You know, I'm one of those early adapters. I was just telling somebody I just downloaded the new Alexa app. Oh my gosh, you can have full conversations with her. It's amazing. Anyway, so, but 3D printing, right? That's cool technology. So I have to kind of show you on this one. Just regular, issues that we'd always had trouble with. Hand clearance to do hand starting of lug nuts. Look at this cool gadget that we, I don't know if I can do this. Oh, yeah. So it hand starts 5 lug nuts all in one go. We 3D printed that. Very cool. So it's not that I knew anything about 3D printing. I'm excited about what kind of technology I can use to solve these problems that have always been challenges. So I encourage you to go and see what's out there and what might interest you. In this case, we had some hand clearance. We're using digital human models. We had interference with the model, but the engineers are like, are you sure that's going to be a problem, right? You can see that there's some little bumping. I'm sure the skin will compress. Those probably, I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway, had this brainwave, why don't we print the space? Now my 3D print guys are like, okay, this is a new one. Everybody else asked me to print parts, and you're asking me to print space. But we cut the CAD and basically sent it, and sure enough, they print me all the things that were in the CAD to allow me to then take that part, go into the engineering meetings and say, okay, you make this connection. You put your hand in here. Now remember, why didn't I just use the car? We're talking 2 years before this car was going to be in production. So I like to think that we solved this ergo problem well before the worker even knew it was going to be an ergo problem, right? So anyway, again, I get excited about new technology, and I think that is a fun thing to do. So that's how you're supposed, there we go. Okay, I talked a little bit about, I was kind of pushed into trying to find ways to evaluate the ergonomics up front using the CAD. At that time, there was a lot going on in the gaming industry, and motion capture was coming in, and so we were able to play in this space of using motion capture and then immersing someone in the CAD and saying, okay, how would you reach for that? How would you put that on? And so we could create the environment of the future. And one of the other fun things on that one is we used to then bring also the worker that was on the line in and ask them, okay, this is what's going to look like in the future. Could you reach it? Could you do it? So the way we then analyze that for those that kind of are new to the motion capture is we get someone to be looking through the thing. They be able to see where they're supposed to reach in the CAD world. You have to put some framework, because if you want someone to lean, there's nothing to lean on in the virtual world. We had a few fall over. So lesson learned, put something for them to lean on it if you really want them to lean. And then we then use the digital human model, Jack and Jill, and then we're able to do the biomechanical analysis then once we knew what the posture was potentially going to be, or even multiple postures to decide which one might be better. And like I said, whenever it was possible and feasible, we brought those experts in, right? The people who are already building it on the line said, come on in, this is what's going to look like in 2 years. Tell us if this is going to work or not, right? And let me see what posture you're in, and then I'll analyze it and we can kind of work that through. So that was how I ended up getting into that whole digital human model, motion capture, and lo and behold, not a lagging indicator, a leading indicator was we then started to see the number of ergonomic issues at the build drop. So why that's significant is we're now looking for all the issues in the virtual world. So back in, okay, this is really old, but 2004, we would often find the ergo issues, they can't reach it, the insertion for, all these things. So we up to like 360 ergo issues at that point, and then now we are finding them in the virtual world. We got, in a short period of time, down to like only 38 issues found, because we were getting, in the physical build. I hope, and it is true, I just didn't have this data, we were finding a lot in the virtual world, which is great. We can deal with it in the virtual world. We haven't cut metal. We haven't invested, okay, we invested time, but we haven't invested the real money of the prototypes and the tooling costs and things like this. So the data drove a lot of that help of my building relationships. They started to believe, hey, this ergo thing, maybe not too bad. We're seeing some impact. Now, didn't do this alone. Starting to build my relationships, they're really good, but I have to say, you need outside help too. And I would love to see that. And use the resources that are out there. There's a lot. I was a big fan of universities and students, co-op students, and my consultants. You've got a full-time job and you want to do these special projects, even though they're integrated, you need help. But you show some pretty darn good improvements and say, we're on to something here, then I hope that you've built that some of these can be funded. But it does take a village. This was one of our first research into exoskeletons. So on the line there, we actually do have exoskeletons deployed, but some of our first designs to play with exoskeletons, oh my gosh, did I ever mess it up. This is a project with Boeing, because they had some problems with overhead riveting, and we actually attached the power tool to the operator's waist. Okay? Oh, stop laughing, Jack. I know a good biomechanist should have known that the minute the tool went far away and it was attached to my spine. They didn't fall over, but they did complain about the stress that the power tool. But, we tried, and he wasn't supposed to bend over. Apparently, he drops things every once in a while and they bend over, and that's to say, we evolved, and now we have some pretty cool exoskeleton designs. Okay, I'm gonna play this one I'm watching my time, but I think I'm gonna skip this one. All right, I will, if we have time, I'll play it. It's just using technology and playing this idea of information sharing and collaboration and some of the new technology. But I'm gonna skip it right, apparently I'm not. Yeah, I am. Okay, I am. Okay, we can show you that afterwards, and we can make it available. Okay, so my fourth advice. So now I've got a good vision. I've got a whole big relationships on all sides. I'm having fun. And I realize, this is that Six Sigma lesson, that sometimes the engineers would love to help me, but they have this other job, right? They are being evaluated, and at Ford, I don't know in all things, but their performance review was related to their raises and their bonuses. So guess who's getting priority? Their primary job. So we talk through this, and I'm like, I need your help. I need you to help me with this. I can't do this. This is your responsibility to make sure we don't introduce ergonomic risk factors, right? But they're like, yeah, but I've got to work on my quality directives and this and this and this. So we decided that they actually could do both and accomplish both, but we needed to actually call it out. And this was like that aha moment where upper management said, you're right. We tell them they're supposed to do ergonomics, but we don't measure it. We don't even tell them what they're supposed to do. Just do good ergonomics. So we actually wrote it into every level of management's performance review. Now, the challenge with this is one of those statements of be careful what you wish for. Because once you put it in there, you got to be able to measure it, right? Because I, as a young engineer, have got to know I achieved my ergonomic targets because this is how I measure them. So we actually went through and basically said 0 red ergonomic design issues, and we defined what a design issue was going to be. It was going to exceed, beyond the reach of a 5th percentile female. I'll give you the basics. It was going to be that a 95th percentile male will be able to install your part and have adequate clearance. And then the harder one to measure, because you'd have to do some ergonomic studies, was that the strength to put your part on was at the level of a 25th percentile female, or accommodates 75% of the female population. And then we then evaluated, or the engineer was asked to evaluate their parts against those criteria. Lots of programs, lots of things that help them do that. And again, good to grow your team at this point because you have a lot of people now doing ergo and a lot that we have to have a good measurable. And then you had to report out at management reviews, just like all your other metrics, how many red ergo issues you had and your plan to bring your issues down to 0. This was that moment of it left me and took on a life of its own, right? I didn't need to be there. It was truly an integrated now into the culture, right? They being everybody knew what their role was to ensure that ergonomics was there. So adding realistic and measurable ergonomic metrics to management and engineering, or your team if you're not necessarily in that. Okay, advice 5, so I'm running out of time, is to learn their language and their tools, right? So like I said, when they asked me to look at the CAD, no idea what I was looking at. So I had to do some education on digital human modeling, never done that before, and how to use CAD. Not necessarily how to use it, but how to orient parts so I could look at things. Got to do Six Sigma because they were all talking GPA, talking, I don't know, all that statistic stuff. And so to be able to talk their language and say, no, this is going to affect our, parts per million and our this, you've got to be able to talk their language. So that would be my other advice. Get in early. I didn't quite have that early enough. And when I finally realized, just got to learn how to talk to them. That was a really big part of that. Okay. Then, I know it's advice number 6, but it really is a great one, and I'm glad you started with that. Prevention. Come on. It's really where we got to go, right? So this is this idea, like I said, that Six Sigma, prevent it coming into the plant, prevent it coming. So how do you prevent something? So this is where Jack and I have had these things. So you can wear hearing protection, right? What do you do for ergo? Well, we started small. So we had put lots of lift tables in and risers in because people were bending and lifting parts. So we then said, well, the solution is risers and lift tables, right? So should we make it that everything needs a riser and lift table? Nah, because then you have to go out and analyze it and all this. So we absolutely just made a rule that said no part shall be presented on the floor. It has to be presented above 24 inches, which happens to be knee height of, I can't remember who, 95th. Who almost got that wrong on the exam. Now, of a tall person, right? So you don't want the tall person going their hand below their knee. So that was the new ergonomic engineering guideline. That was the other one I'd say. Ergonomics is engineering. So that's where I was the constraint. The new engineering guideline was any new rearrangement or any new workstation, the part cannot be presented on the floor. We know from experience the part needs to be above 24 inches. Guess what? They had to find the money because they couldn't actually make the change unless they had that. Don't tell me it's 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that is one. So you kind of learn from your experience of that and then chunk it so that it is digestible, right? No part below 24 inches. Engineering guidelines, so that's kind of in that. Create internal standards, kind of along that line. And this is where I say influence industry. You're not the only one suffering from this, right? Patient handling is happening in a lot of facilities, right? Building cars, I loved it when we were talking on the impact stories, and Kim's like, wow, we used to do that also, and I wonder where we got that idea. Who knows? But we have a lot of the same problems, right? So talk to your other industry partners, use the guidelines, hopefully use the impact stories too, and follow through of others have probably had very similar issues. And I know we've got a few in there. So even down to design guidelines, and I have a story on that, so I don't have to spend that. But we also share these ideas. So yes, we have internal standards that we don't like to share because they may have some competitiveness to it, but we also have really good ideas like best practices. We've got best practice databases. We shared those internally. We had competitions. Remember that fun part? Who had the best idea? Well, they're all really good ideas, but who had like a really cool one? And we'd even go and compete. The winning teams would go to the Applied Ergo Conference and compete for the Ergo Cup. And let's face it, going on conferences like this is great for networking and team building too. So again, once you start to kind of have these great ideas and good things, remember to continue that in the collaboration. And we then, like that with US Car, we were able to also get with the Society of Automotive Engineers and as a group make electrical connector standards that are now adopted by anyone who has to use electrical connectors. So that's kind of cool. There. So in conclusion, what caught their eye, we made a difference. The vision is true, I'm telling you. If you make changes and reduce those risks, the injuries will come down, right? And you will have a lot of fun on the way if you want to. If you need help with deciding what fun is, we can talk. But what changed? I think you'll know when that time is. When you get frustrated that you're seeing the same old stuff in there and the same old problems, it's time to start asking, who's sending me this? Like, where am I getting it? And it might be like I did some work with the hospitals. It might be the vendors. It might be that, ultrasound piece of equipment that your purchasing guys bought because it was the cheapest. yeah, let's have some talks with the purchasing people, okay? There needs to be an ergonomic line in there that says that the wand can't be whatever you've learned, right? So even though I had, I knew where to find my engineers, and you might have to look a little bit, but ask that question of how do I move it so it doesn't come back in? I just say have fun playing with new technology. There's some really cool stuff out there. And then I think this is one of my proudest things, is that I could leave Ford and the ergonomics program still goes on. And it's integrated into the business, it's integrated into the culture and into these standards. So I encourage you to do that. And then you've got to go forward, because I've got to go. There's lots of traveling I got to do. So you now officially have the baton. It's your go. And my only advice would be use those universities, use those resources, use those students, and go get them. I have a vision. No more musculoskeletal disorders in our plants. We can do it. All right. Okay, Kim to my left, I heard. Oh, don't let him ask a question.
Don't let me ask any questions.
Yeah, but I think we're going to go online first, and then you. Maybe we'll run out of time. He's from my past. I don't know how my relationship building was, but no. Yes, Kim, go.
So in a manufacturing setting, the main focus is on helping operations complete their tasks. What are your recommendations for helping maintenance with their work? One-off tasks that are deemed too heavy or awkward are often assigned to maintenance, as they usually have a just-do-it mentality.
Yes, that is. Well, the maintenance guys work on two sides in my world, right? So I used to be able to go to the maintenance guys and run my problems, and they had a wealth of knowledge because they knew everything, right? So I'm going to say go back to number one, build your relationships. Build the relationship with the maintenance guys. Get them to help you with the ones that we think is easier, kind of maybe online, because like I said, they have a wealth of knowledge. Then, as you're getting there, you can have those deep conversations. Okay, I get it. You don't know what you're going to do, but you've just helped me reduce that reach, and yet, where are some of the ones that you have some really tough reach situations? We had one that had to lift a maintenance guy had to lift a really heavy lid. I'll call it lid, to get into where they had to fix some stuff. And in that conversation, he's like, that is so heavy and it's so hard. And we started talking about, well, why don't we just hang a chain there? I know it's only going to be used like a chain and a hook, right? A little wind up. I know it's not going to get used every day because it's a maintenance, but we know that that's the thing. So I guess my answer is, you got to still start chipping away. You can't ignore them. We also started looking at the injuries that were coming out of our maintenance, and they are not insignificant, right? So the same logic of go down and figure out what those risk factors are. You're not going to get them all, but I believe we got to start somewhere. So even with maintenance, build the relationships, go and find out. There are some probably low-hanging fruit that you can still make some impact on. Okay? All right.
I know I can't get up here without, every time you're here, I'm here, so.
I know.
Sorry.
We have some history.
We have a history, yes. I can say that I can attest to all the things that Allison has said, because my work experience for 30-something years at Ford was following all the things that her vision saw. So we were using all of these
sometimes
things.
With resistance, sometimes with a little
and
resistance.
her vision, but especially her relationship building. She did a lot of work that built trust between both the employer and the workers, between the employer and the union. And she made things fun. So when we met, she made things fun. So she's been a testament to everything she says. And I'm standing in the back of the class, and in the class, I guess, in the back of the hall, and I'm seeing a lot of heads that are going, as you're saying things, a lot of heads are going up and down. I think a lot of us are living these experiences that you're talking about on our day-to-day basis. So my first point is not a question, is that maybe now that you're retired, you can write the book that you thought you were going to be writing about.
I probably said that one moment,
I
didn't
don't know,
I?
but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
should be writing the book.
Well, I was
and the
trying to
second
start
thing is,
jacking
sorry,
the
I'm going to cut you off
podcast.
for 1
Yeah.
second before the book. And then I'm going to let you talk because you do a lot of talking. That's your forte. And the second thing is that I want you to just talk about the importance of hearing it from the ground level, listening to what the workers have to say. And I'll let you talk now.
Thanks. It's really nice. That's kind. Yes, I'm trying to never cut it. Yeah, well, thank you. You know, like you can see, it's about the relationships. And Unifor and what was your CAW back then were hard. They were hard, man. But it was that hard that meant if I got there, it was way more rewarding, right? They really questioned why. Why are we doing that? No, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. Or that's a disadvantage for us to do it. And I would be like, but we really went through some iterations of that relationship. And I can test that to my students. I always say, you have experts on that line. The worker is the expert. They do know what they're talking about. Nobody goes to work because they want to get injured, right? And don't get bogged down with a few that are, work in the system. At the end of the day, there are so many amazing, talented, and really cool stories out there that you just need to take the time and go find them. Look at that, and they even start to like you by the end. A little bit. Okay, that was pushing it, right? That was pushing it. Sorry. All right, yeah. Oh, one more online.
So were you able to shift the perception of being a constraint, as you mentioned, into a supportive element? And if yes, what was the key factor that contributed to that change?
Well, I embraced being a constraint. So, engineers live with constraints, right? They can't build something without knowing the laws of physics. Gravity is a constraint, right? We all like gravity until you don't like gravity, right? So I think I embraced being a constraint as I'm your gravity, man. We cannot go forward without understanding what those, what we're gonna do. Like, we're gonna introduce a risk factor. That's just not acceptable. We gotta come up with a different way to do it. So I guess my answer is embrace your constraints. Yeah.
Please join me in thanking Allison.